And so label reading is the information useful. Just some general stuff on the label. The authority that determines the label laws is what we call the Food Standards Australia and New Zealand. They're a government entity that determines what goes on a label. They determine whether or not what a manufacturer can put on the label, whether it's accurate versus inaccurate, etc., etc. And so those terms that manufacturers put on the labels should have some type of, if they want to make a claim, for example, they should be able to back it up with that claim with some evidence. And so let's go through some of these label information here and see what we can come up with. First of all, ever seen on a label, best before? You ever seen best before? Okay. And you also have the term used by. And so best before, as it says here, refers to the quality that we retain until that date. Now you may see on a canned goods, for example, a can of beans or a can of whatever, they'll say best before April of 2024. Does that mean the food's unsafe after that? No, you can still use that food. Like it's a canned good, you can still use that food after that. It's still the quality or the nutrient quality of that particular product isn't guaranteed after that particular date. But in terms of safety, that food can be used. And so, for example, you canned beans, you canned pinto beans, you canned chickpeas and all the rest of it can be used after the best before date and still be safe to use. So don't throw it out if it's like a month after the best before, it's still okay to use. But the use by date, on the other hand, are more used for perishable foods, things like your dairy. You may see if you buy, for example, if you buy, this is a thing of oat milk, 21st of January 2025, and so they'll say it's a use by date. It's more of like for your things like yogurt and stuff, like milk and stuff like that. It'll have a use by date or a use by date on it, that after that particular date, that product is probably not safe to use. And so that's what it means by a use by date. It's more for perishable items, and that's what that really means. And that is an actual legal term on the label that is there. And there's certain rules according to food standards that food, if it does say that on, for example, a bottle of milk or something like that, that's what that actually means. Okay, now the ingredient list. So you got the ingredient list. With the ingredient list, it lists the ingredients from the major ingredients to the minor ingredients in terms of weight. And so that means, for example, let's take a look at this Up and Go. Now, Up and Go, the first ingredient is water. The second ingredient is soy protein. The third ingredient is corn maltodextrin. Then cane sugar, then plant fibre, then vegetable oils. So in order of descending weight or volume, that's what the ingredient list is. And so when you're looking at an ingredient list and say if it's good, whether it's good versus not so good, if it has a big long list of ingredients, you sort of, oh, that's not so good because it's got a whole bunch of other stuff in it. But if any, like a short list of ingredients, more than likely it's going to be a more beneficial item in terms of health. For example, this is a thing of dried pasta. The first ingredient on this dried pasta is Australian durum wheat. The second ingredient is it's Australian durum wheat semolina. The second ingredient is wheat gluten. The third ingredient is oat fibre. Only 3 ingredients in that. So in terms of health, it's probably a better item than, say, something that has about a list of ingredients that long. And so it gives you an idea of the ingredient list. So the first ingredient is the major ingredient. Then the next thing, then it goes in order of descending, goes down in descending weight and volume, or volume. The next one is the nutritional information. And so in the nutritional information, you'll have the energy, In kilojoules, who knows how much are kilojoules? Who's familiar more with calories? So 1 kilojoule, I say 4 kilojoules is 1 calorie. So divide the kilojoules by 4 and you'll get the number of calories that are in that. I tend to be more used to calories because I did my training in the United States, but kilojoules is a unit of energy. Then you have the grams of protein, and then the grams of fat, and you'll have the fat set in terms of fat. It'll be either saturated, polyunsaturated, and monounsaturated. Then you have the carbohydrates, and they'll have sugars. So carbohydrate includes things like, in your carbohydrate list, you'll include like the sugars, but also if it's a starchy food, it'll include the starches of that particular product, and also the fiber. So there's the total carbohydrates in that particular item. So a carbohydrate containing food a fiber is a type of carbohydrate. All your different types of sugars are a type of carbohydrate, and your starches are a type of carbohydrate. It's under what we call a carbs or carbohydrates. And so they've got that separated between carbohydrate and sugar. Then you have fiber, the sodium, and then others could include things like potassium, calcium, iron, etc. And so that's on your nutritional information panel. And so how do they determine that? So with food standards, we'll go to Coles and Woolies, they'll collect samples. For example, if they want to look at the label information or information of a whole wheat flour, for example, what they'll do is they'll go to Coles, Woolies, different stores, and they'll collect samples, about 8 or 9 different samples of whole wheat flour. Then they'll test it. Then that'll give the information of what the actual flour is. And that's the nutrition information. That's how they determine like the food content or the nutrient content of different foods. But that's what the manufacturers use that standard as they determine the nutritional information.
So, excuse me, those people that determine that information, they are not like dietitians or nutritionists, or are they just a group of people that...
Yeah, what they do is the Food Standards is a very large organisation, and they'll go to different stores to say, what's the nutrient content of whole wheat flour or white flour, etc., etc. And they'll go to different stores. They'll just collect them like you and I do, go to the different stores and buy whole wheat flour or white flour or whatever, and then they'll test it, and that's what they come up with. So it's not a special thing they're trying to use. They'll just, like you and I, they'll go to the stores and collect the samples, and then they'll test it, and that's what they do, and that's what they come up with, this information. So
that what they collect will go back to a food lab and be tested properly.
They tested at an actual food lab.
Food lab.
Yes, yes,
So
yeah.
like food scientists.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
Like, yeah.
So they don't get special stuff to do it. They'll just go to the store like everyone else and collect it and test it at a food science lab, yeah. And so that's where all that information comes from. But the serving size, some other information you may have on the label, you'll have the serving size. We'll look at a few labels later on. You'll have the serving size. The serving size is not a standard thing. The serving size is determined by the manufacturer. And so if, for example, if you have, like Kellogg's, for example, let me see. This is Nutri-Grain, this is one of the more popular breakfast cereals. And so the serving size for the Kellogg have put in for this Nutri-Grain is, they'll say there's 40 grams is the serving size. But that is defined by the manufacturer. That may not necessarily mean that it's the standard serving size you put in your plate. And so there's can be a little bit of deception there. And so what they've also got on the nutritional information is the quantity per 100 grams. So they've got a standardized serving size there that will say this is the amount that's in this product per 100 grams. And that's what you will probably go with in terms of whether or not that is because the manufacturer can put whatever serving size they want on it. And so this per 100 grams gives you a good indicator of the quantity in a standardized serving. So it could be either 100 mils, 100 per average quantity per 100 grams or 100 mils, depending on it's whether liquid or a dry item. And then it goes per average daily values, and that's based on a 2100 calorie diet. And that's like an average type of diet, or 8700 kilojoules. So I'm going through a bit of the boring stuff at the moment. Once we get into the labels, we'll sort of understand how we're going. Just going back to the, okay. Whoops, what happened there? Here we go. Nutrition claims. Okay. You may see a claim on a label that says light. You ever seen that on a thing? Light? Could refer to the colour, texture or taste. So you don't really know until it has to define a particular... Yeah, it could be light. And for example, there's a light soy milk. That's a So Good light soy milk. So, okay, what are they referring to? Light could mean lots of different things. And so what you look at is so they're referring to the fat in this one. So the regular soy So Good contains around about 8 grams of fat per serving, where this one is only 3.3. So the amount of fat per serving is less that's when they call it light. So light has to describe a particular characteristic of the product. And it can be deserving unless you actually know what the light refers to. It could be light colour, texture or taste. Low cholesterol or cholesterol low cholesterol or cholesterol free, that should be free there, is meaningless with foods with no animal products in them, since they could be high in saturated fat. So, for example, this has no cholesterol at all. And some manufacturers have put on something cholesterol free, and they never had cholesterol in it in the first place because it comes from plants. So you may see stuff like that. And so it can be somewhat deceiving. No added sugar. Percentage fat free, 90% fat free sounds better than 8% fat. And so reduced, when they see the term reduced, that refers to could be 25% less of a particular nutrient in that product. For example, it could be 25% less fat compared to a normal, to the original, or it could be referred to sugar or salt of that particular product. So reduced does have a legal definition on a label. So it sounds all confusing, doesn't it?
Well, a bit of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you did have cholesterol that your doctor said your cholesterol's too high,
Yeah.
what we normally try and do is just down the amount of what we think would put the cholesterol up.
Yeah, so you may for example, have a product that says cholesterol free. Oh, that's going to be okay for me to have. But it may be high and there's something else that makes your cholesterol higher.
Carbohydrates, say.
Yeah.
Because that can put your cholesterol up too, can't it?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
No, not the carbohydrates,
There's
more...
animal type fats.
Yeah, so your cholesterol is found only in the animal fat or
So
only...
cheese, milk, whatever.
So there's no cholesterol in any plant products at all. There's no cholesterol at all in nuts. There's no cholesterol in olive oils or olives or anything like that. Yeah.
Does saturated fats put your cholesterol up? It does.
Yes. It's very good evidence to indicate that. So your saturated fats are the ones that are solid at room temperature. And so your animal fats typically are going to be solid at room temperature, your butter fats and things like that. So they're the ones that can raise the cholesterol levels, and they've done very extensive studies to indicate a causal response there.
So just in saying that your cholesterol's up, does that put you at more risk to have a stroke and things like that, or a clot or whatever?
Potentially there's a high risk of what we call vascular disease. Yeah, so that could include heart disease.
Heart disease.
Also, if there's blockages in the arteries going up to your head, could cause stroke. Yes.
You've got good and bad cholesterol too.
Yeah. And there's good and bad cholesterol, which is a whole different thing.
HDL
Yeah.
and LDL.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
HDL is your bad, isn't it?
No, it's the good
Oh,
cholesterol.
that's the good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So your LDL or low density
It's all
lipoprotein.
on female on our other side of
Yeah.
the family have all died with strokes,
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
including my mum, who I looked after for
Yeah.
years.
So that's with the stroke, there's usually tied a lot to, could be the build up of plaque in the arteries, whether it be in the heart, not so much in the heart, but into the arteries going to the brain. That's when people with stroke who are prone to stroke sometimes have to watch the sodium levels, make sure they eat plenty of fruits and vegetables and all that stuff that helps protect them. So, some other claims you come across. You ever heard the term natural?
Yeah.
Does that mean anything?
I go to that health food shop when I want that salt in Harvey Bone. It's called Go Natural.
Go natural?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. This,
Yeah.
well, natural has no legal definition. It's put there by the manufacturer to, quotes, make it more appealing for you to buy it.
So when you say no legal definition, so they can put natural on it
Mm-hmm.
and they won't be persecuted or charged for saying
Yep,
something
exactly.
wrong. Okay.
Ever seen the term superfood?
Yep.
Yeah.
Does that mean anything?
Well,
Supposedly
I don't
good
think
for
you
you.
see it actually in the thing, but it might be in their,
Yeah.
on their front cover.
their logo sort of.
Yeah, their logo, or but I don't know.
So you may see this. A few years ago, there's goji berries. That was the superfood. There's cranberries as a superfood. This, that. Then they're saying the coffee manufacturers are saying coffee is a superfood. I've heard that too.
Logo, isn't it? Their-
Stuff like
their
that.
logo, so-
That has also no legal definition. So you can call anything you like a superfood, and people will buy it.
Because all the barley greens and things like that, don't they have superfoods on that?
Yeah. So. Okay, what I would suggest is that most of your fruits and vegetables are all superfoods. Look at it from that angle, because they are. Some foods are high in particularly nutrients, are very beneficial to the health, but other foods may be higher in a separate type of nutrients that are very good for your health. So if you take the whole thing together, all your plant-based foods or all your foods as grown, I would class them all as being superfoods. And that includes your grains. For example, a very good breakfast is just rolled oats. It's one of the best ones out there. It's
Can you
very,
cook
very
it?
simple.
Cook it like porridge.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Is
Yeah,
porridge,
like
porridge. Yeah,
porridge,
yeah. But that's the one. It's a very beneficial one. And when I hear my patients say, "I have porridge in the morning," I say, "Hey, way to go! It's a good one." So yeah. So superfood has no legal term. It's a food. It's a marketing term. And so if a manufacturer puts superfood on their product, people are, oh, superfood, it must be good for me. But it doesn't mean anything at all.
I'm going to be like, who's that guy that had olive oil?
Popeye.
Popeye.
Popeye, oh, that's a spinach, yeah. That was a superfood, yeah. I don't think it does the same thing as what spinach does to Popeye, though. And so most fruits and vegetables are high in nutrients could also be considered superfoods in one way or the other. For example, your beans, all your bean family, your lentils, your pinto beans, your kidney beans, all those ones are very good. And I would class them as being a superfood. So all your foods as grown, you could class them as being a superfood, but it is no scientific or legal definition when it's on the label. Baked, not fried. So you may hear the term baked, not fried. Also may not mean much, but it sounds healthier, but it may be a food that's high in fat that's being baked rather than or high in cholesterol, something like that that's being baked. So fried implies there's going to be a lot of added fat, which is true, but also baked foods could be also high in that saturated fat and cholesterol. So just being aware of that. No added sugar means that a product has no added sugars added to it. It may still be high in naturally occurring sugars from milk or fruit. Often seen in fruit juice and yogurt. So no added sugar does have is a legal term, but doesn't mean to say there's naturally occurring sugars in that particular product, which doesn't mean to say they're bad, but it's just being aware of that. And we'll look at some labels here and it'll show the different types of sugars that are on it. In terms of sugars, when you're looking on an ingredient label, you'll see table sugar, then you may see maltodextrin, you may see dextrose, maltose, glucose, lactose, molasses, honey, rice malt syrup, malt extract, raw sugar, brown sugar, modified carbohydrate and coconut sugar. Is there any difference between them? Much?
Probably not.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah.
There is a little bit of difference. For example, lactose is a milk sugar. It's found only in milk, and it is what we call a disaccharide. But it's not the same. It's not the same as, say, sucrose, which is table sugar, which is there's a totally different. Could refer to different types of sugars or different types of carbohydrate. Now, there's about 6 general types of sugar. There's what we call disaccharides and monosaccharides, and they all are in various forms in different foods. And not all of them are bad necessarily, but that's actually naturally occurring in food. For example, sucrose is table sugar. Now, table sugar, a lot of people say we need to avoid table sugar, which is a good idea because it's very empty, what we call empty calories. But there's a number of foods that do have sucrose or table sugar in them, but they're in a more natural form. Onions. You ever caramelize onions in the pan? They taste sweet, don't they? It's because of the sucrose is in them. There's table sugar, there's sugar in them. But does that mean it's bad? No, it's not necessarily bad. It's how it's packaged as nature that we look at that. And so, but it's more the problem with table sugar. You take the sugar cane, what do? They crush it, then they extract then they'll come out as molasses, then they'll refine it further. It'll come raw sugar, brown sugar, then white sugar. But it's missing a whole bunch of other stuff. And therefore, as in terms of health, it's not very good because it's nothing there much, it's just calories. And so when man starts messing around with food and refining things, it tends to make it less healthful. But I guess that's the bottom line as far as that goes. But that's in terms of fat, there's other different terms for fat. I'll read them, some of them to you. There's butter fat, margarine, animal fat, shortening, coconut oil, kofa, cream, lard, ghee, G-H-E-E, that's like an Indian thing, dripping, palm oil, mayonnaise, sour cream, vegetable oil, hydrogenated oil, coconut oil and cream, full cream milk, solids. So all those are different terms for fat and other names for fat. And so when you're looking at an ingredient label, for example, this is a vegan mayonnaise. The first ingredient is canola oil. So obviously it's going to be a high fat item, isn't it? Now, should we avoid that? It's just being aware of that, and if I do use it, only use it very sparingly. But the first ingredient is going to determine the actual, is going to be higher in that particular item. And so the number of other labels on claims is low fat, must be less than 3 grams of fat per 100 grams. Light or light can as refer to as light as can describe various aspects of the food. No added salt. Has a food added no added salt means high naturally occurring salt, but check the label for salt content. Salt reduced is less than 25% than the similar product. Low salt or low sodium, that is a legal term. If it says low sodium soup, for example, it has to be less than 120 milligrams per serving, per 100 grams. And so for people I have a number of people who've been on sodium restricted diets because they've got fluid retention, that's when they look into those particular amount of salt that's in those products. Because they may, if they eat a lot of salt, their limbs, they'll start to swell up and stuff like that.
I find soy sauce has a lot of
It does. Soy sauce has a lot of salt in it.
salt in it.
Yeah. And so you have to be careful of those. Another high salt food is regular canned soup. Now, in one serving of regular canned soup, you're looking around about 800 milligrams of salt. So that's a huge amount of sodium in those. So your processed foods tend to be higher in your sodium. And so, as I was mentioning earlier, there's some of the other terms you might come across. Another thing that's on labels is food allergies. Now, people who have food sensitivities, this is where they'll look at this, or food allergies, and there are about 10 that they put on, or 10 or 11 now, I think it is. Peanuts, tree nuts, seafood, shellfish, eggs, soy, milk, wheat, sesame, and lupins. Also, some high siliciate foods are another one that's starting to be added to as well.
What's lupins?
Lupins are a legume.
Oh,
Usually it's used in a lot of stock foods, but also can be used in human consumption. My brother is a farmer down in central New South Wales, and he'll grow lupins sometimes. Additional notes, percentage
Excuse
fats.
me,
Yep.
Graham?
Yep.
Graham, is that aspartame? Is that as dangerous as what people tell us? Aspartame?
There's some studies coming out, so and it is not very, I would.
Is that because that Santos put that in it because they're a big conglomerate that put rubbish
Yeah.
in stuff?
Yeah,
that?
it is a non-nutrient sweetener, and there's aspartame.
What's that made
There's,
of? Do you know what that's made of, that aspartame?
I don't remember now. Yeah, off the top of my head.
I was
Yeah,
just wondering because I have heard it's really
but a lot of the sugar-free products aren't very good for you in terms of people will use a lot of sugar-free stuff in order to try and lose weight. The opposite is true. People tend to not lose any weight with their sugar-free products. It doesn't work. They'll make up for the calories in other areas. So it's not, and in high quantities, so they're finding that it's not a very safe or healthful item. Okay, let's look at some labels. Let's hand out some of these breakfast cereals. There's Nutrigrain.
I actually used to like this. I don't buy it much at all. Eh?
There's some Cocoa Pops.
Yeah.
There's cornflakes. There's some Wheat Bix. There's some Special K. Some Rice Bubbles. There's Just Right. Anyone who wants some Just Right? Let's hand out a few of these other labels. There's
I've never bought these. What's this one? Toasted cheese and crackers.
So look at your shopping. When you've got them all there, just read out the first ingredient on your list and see what we can come up with there.
First ingredients in this cheese is pasteurised milk, salt, starter culture, milk, enzyme, vegetarian rennet,
Yep.
cracker, wheat flour, vegetable oil, contains palm oil, antioxidant, salt, and raising agent.
So what do you think about that particular food? Sounds kind of processed, isn't it? Very, very much processed. Has anyone got, what else have we got there? Breakfast. Next thing, what the Special K.
Special K, that's supposed to be.
Oh, I never buy those.
It's supposed to be quite a healthy one, isn't it? Yep.
So, but I find when I eat these sorts of processed foods, I do put on weight.
Mhm.
So it's rice, which is 42%. It doesn't say whether it's white or brown.
Yeah.
Whole grain cereals is 23%, that's wheat and oat.
That bad.
Then there's wheat protein, sugar, minerals, iron, zinc, oxide, fibre, salt, barley, malt, extract, vitamins.
Yeah.
So there's all these vitamins.
Yeah, so there's a lot of vitamins and minerals added to a lot of your cereals. Has anyone got Wheat Bix there? Let's see what because Wheat Bix is supposedly, the bee's knees as far as cereal goes. So let's see what it has.
Whole grain wheat 97%,
Oh, 97.
raw sugar, salt, barley malt extract, vitamins, niacin, riboflavin, folate and mineral iron.
So the first ingredient is whole grains, whole wheat. It's 97%. That's not too bad, really, isn't it? Compared to some other of your cereals. But Weet-Bix also contains a little bit of sugar, but it's not as great a quantity. But it contains a fair amount of salt. So people who are watching salt may need to watch the Weet-Bix. So that's just some of the things to be aware of. If you've got high blood pressure and you're sensitive to salt, that's when you look at the salt content of those things and see, what the deal is. There's another product here, Up and Go. Who's ever had Up and Go? Who's ever had Up and Go?
My grandkids drink this.
I know, it's very popular. And I used to deal with a lot of cancer patients, and some of the cancer patients drink it because it's cheaper than buying something like Ensure or Sustagen and stuff like that. But let's look at the first ingredient on Up and Go. The first ingredient is, water. So there's nothing wrong with that, is there? The second ingredient is skim milk powder. Then there's, this is like a dairy one. Then there's maltodextrin, cane sugar. What's maltodextrin? That's another name for sugar, really. It's another name for sugar. So the third ingredient in Up and Go is sugar. And then it goes on plant fibre, soy protein, etc. Then a whole bunch of vitamins and minerals. So in terms of sugar, Up and Go is fairly high when you look at it, isn't it?
Yes, because this one's got maltodextrin.
Yep.
It's got cane sugar.
Yep.
And then it's got fructose. or
Fructose. Yeah. So all types of different types of sugars, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So that's in terms of. There's some more recent research indicating that what we call ultra-processed foods can be very dangerous to your health. Ultra-processed foods is where they'll take the food and take everything good out of it and add a whole bunch of junk to it. I guess that. And so when you see at a label, there's a whole bunch of, a lot of the stuff you can't even pronounce. It's more what we call ultra-processed foods. It's missing a lot of stuff that could be beneficial for your health. And they're finding in some areas that is contributing to heart disease. And so there's some recent research coming out with that. Yep.
So these, cassava flour is 60%, tapioca flour, but then high oleic sunflower oil and high oleic sapphire oil, sugar, shallot, leaf, salt, sesame. So what's a high oleic sunflower?
Oleic refers to a particular fatty acid in the, I think it's what they call a long chain fatty acid in the sunflower oil. They'll process the sunflower and safflower oil to indicate it as a high oleic content.
Yeah, is that
Oil.
or is that
Well, there's sort of varying opinions with that.
in the process?
Yeah. So the manufacturer will probably claim that's pretty good, but when it boils down to it, the amount of fat is going to be the same in terms of calories versus any other type of oil. Anyone else got a label that they want to look at?
Well, this one reckons it's low sugar and low carb,
Yep.
and it's made with real food made with real passion, and it's gluten-free.
There you go. So let's see if there's see how it looks.
So coconut is 22%, and in brackets, coconut preservatives, 223 sulfites, white chocolate chips, 15%, sweetener, maltitol.
Maltitol. That's it's a type of
Sugar alcohol.
sugar. We call it sugar alcohol.
Cocoa solids, 26%, milk solids, 13%, soy protein, oxalate, emulsifier, soya, natural flavours, sunflower seeds, but then it's got raising salt agent 450, 500, and I always understood the higher the number, the worse the
Yeah, you have different numbers on a label. That is you can find out, you can go online and sort of put that in. That's what they call, you can get a book that has it as well. So let's just finish up. I'll read you, who's ever had, one of the breakfasts that I hear my patients have, they'll bacon and eggs. That's a pretty well a standard thing for a lot of Australians, apart from no porridge. Okay, bacon, and this is a bacon product, rindless bacon. So the ingredients the first ingredient is pork, the second ingredient is water, the third ingredient is cane is salt, is cure, like they call cure. That's sugar, salt, mineral salts, antioxidant, preservative, and wood smoke. So in terms of nutrient quality, what do you think about that one?
Well, don't eat pork for or bacon or anything.
Yeah,
What is the product? What is it?
it's bacon.
Oh, bacon.
Bacon.
Oh,
It's not the faking bacon, it's the regular stuff. Yeah,
real bacon.
yeah.
Yeah.
The real stuff, the real McCoy. So it's high in saturated fat, but also it is high in cholesterol. Both of those combined could raise your cholesterol more than anything else. So when you come across bacon, it's not, you know, people like it for the flavour. Unfortunately, it's not such a good item as far as that goes.
But doesn't bacon have, doesn't bacon have, they say when it's a certain sausages and some foods have a higher, like it can cause some cancers?
Correct, yes.
What's the name, what's that name?
Nitrates.
No, that's it. Yeah.
So there's a process, a lot of your processed meats will have nitrates or nitrites, which can be causing in terms of colon cancer, colorectal cancer and stuff like that. Yeah, stomach cancer as well. Yeah.
People do
Yeah.
such a-
If you go to that, I've bought this at the setup.com, and you can buy a little card and it has what all the numbers.
Yeah, you can. You can get a book and you go online and plug it in and you'll find out what those numbers are.
It's
Yeah.
handy to have in your purse
Yeah, it
if you
is,
want
yeah,
to know.
yeah.
And then it's got a little magnifying glass
Yep.
for when the ingredients are too small to read.
Yeah, too. Yeah, there you go. That's unfortunate, isn't it? They make it hard for you, don't they? So just the last one is hummus. We just did some hummus. This is a commercial hummus. First ingredient is chickpeas, 66%. Second ingredient is canola oil. Third ingredient is tahini paste, it's a sesame. And then acidity regulator, salt, food acids, etc., etc. And so the first ingredient is good. Second ingredient, oh, it's getting a little high. And I'm not sure why they added the canola oil there. And then you have the tahini, like I said, what we call a hummus tahini. And then it goes on to different flavors and stuff. So in terms of if you had something, you're looking for something helpful, the bottom line is not too bad, really. If you're really struggling to find something, you go to IGA and just look at, what can I have? You find some hummus and some whole grain crackers or something, it's probably going to be a reasonable thing versus some other thing you might come across. So sometimes you have to, especially if you're traveling, you have to you can buy things helpful when you're traveling, but it can be hard sometimes, especially in a hurry.
People don't know. I came across an app a couple of years ago called Yuka, Y-U-K-A.
Yep.
And you download the app, you scan the barcode, and it will give you a percentage out of 100 as to how good that food is, the good things in it, the bad things in it.
Yeah.
You can click on those things and actually tells you what they are.
Yeah.
And then it also gives you healthier or higher options that are like above 50 down the bottom of it. I found that quite helpful when I was starting.
And that's a good idea. I think there's probably a number of other apps there. So I think it's time for everyone to have something to eat. So I've just scratched the surface as far as labelling goes. There's lots and lots of stuff out there. And there's lots and lots of ways that some of your food manufacturers are trying to pull the wool over your eyes as far as selling their product. And so you have to be aware. And look, the longer the ingredient list, probably the less helpful it is for you, I guess, in some ways. And so you have to be, like I said, be aware. Something you might come across sometimes is what they call the glycemic code. This is also a time. This identifies a low glycemic index food, which can be sometimes somewhat healthier. But you still have to apply your other principles as far as that goes with these particular foods.
Excuse me, is canola oil bad for you?
Canola oil is a refined oil. It's probably not the best choice in terms of health because it's basically just fats and not much else.
Does that come from the rape seed?
Comes from rapeseed, or canola,
I got told once it was only good enough to put in your car.
Well, I'm not sure how far as that goes. Initially, canola oil or canola had a high acid content. It was very dangerous in terms of, and they supposedly bred them all out. But you have to be very careful with any types of oils. In terms of oils, the less the amount you use, the better. In terms of healthful benefits, probably your extra virgin cold pressed olive oil is probably one of your best ones.
What about rice bran oil? Is that
Rice bran oil is still a refined product.
still refined?
Yeah, so there's
From rice.
What about coconut oil?
coconut oil is high in saturated fat and it's going to have the same amount of fat content as all your other oils.
So it's not good for cholesterol.
Probably not so good for cholesterol, no. Yeah. So it's more the quantity you're using and being aware that, not all the oils are bad necessarily, but being aware when you're using them in a recipe, can I use a little bit less of this? Can I use a healthier option in terms of oil, for example? And that's when you sort of make those choices to do a better quality product.